Welcome to Advanced Data Analysis 1 with me, Erik Erhardt, Professor of Statistics at the University of New Mexico. In this video, we'll get started with the outline file, which will outline the rest of the semester, the set of analyses we'll be doing using the Personal Codebook. So we'll scroll down to the timetable and find Class 5. And this week we're starting with programming in R, and in the next video, not this one, we'll be reading the data set in and doing numerical summaries. But before we do that, we're first going to move our personal codebook from the previous class into this large outline file, which will, outlines the rest of the analyses we'll do for this semester. So I'm going to download this markdown file, and I'm going to do this as though I were you in this class. Okay, so I've got a file, a temporary location for our class on the desktop for ADA1, and I'm going to download this outline file. It is downloaded. I'm going to go over to RStudio now, and the next three steps I'm going to do is I'm going to open the outline file that we just downloaded. I'm going to open the personal codebook, and I'm going to move the personal codebook information to the outline, and then we're going to look over the outline to see what's in there to set your expectations for the rest of the semester. So let's go over to RStudio and move this window over. Okay. So I already have my personal codebook file open. Okay, and I'll now open up the outline file that I just downloaded. And I'm going to do something here. I'm going to start doing revisions with file names. Now this is a very basic revision control. You can use something like GitHub or something more fancy, Subver, to track versions of your documents if you like. But I really recommend tracking versions of a document as large as this, because there'll be a time when you accidentally select something and delete it and save that file, and then you're in trouble. But if you have a previous version to go back to, you can always go back to that version. So what I typically do is I create a version with the year. So 2020, today happens to be August 30th. So in a few years, this video is going to feel old. And I'm going to save it as that file name. You know what? I need to open the original file name first. So let me open this. And I'm going to, right away, I'm going to save it as, and I'm going to append that year, month, day on there. The reason I do year, month, day instead of some other order like month, day, year, like we do typically in the States, is that the files will sort automatically because there's a hierarchy of year, month, day. All right, so that's now the file that I'm working in. Let's, because we're just doing editing in this document and we're not doing any coding, we can minimize this console window at the bottom, or rather maximize. Either way, we can minimize the console window by clicking here on the minimize for the console, or for the editor we can click the maximize, and that's going to give us a little more space. And we don't really care too much about these right windows at the moment. All right, so here we've got ADA1, our ADA1, the cumulative project file, the name of your project, and your name here. So let's go ahead and personalize it a little bit right now. Sorry, something in another window was being very strange. All right. So what I'm gonna subtitle mine NESARC, Smoking and Depression in Adults, because that comes from my topic. And I put my name here under author. This fancy stuff here under date puts in the month, day, and year from the time. And I'll probably discuss how that works in a later video. All right, so right now, the first thing to do when you download an RMD file really is knit it. Make sure it compiles on your computer. If it doesn't, let's resolve those things first before you start changing things. Okay, so that opened up just fine. I'm going to open it in the browser. And if I scroll down a bit, you'll see that there's an extensive table of contents here. Okay? Let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, so there's a document overview. We will discuss this in this video. Then we were going to move our personal codebook into here, class 04. And then in the next video, we'll work on class 5, all the data, some of the data management stuff, which includes subsetting the data and renaming the variables. And also class 5, numerical summaries, and assess correctness. Basically, you know, do the data ranges look right? Do the category names of the categorical variables seem right? Things like that. Later in the week, we'll be looking at class 6 and other items there. Later in the semester, we're going to graph and tabulate our data, so visualize it and see what the values are. And there's a few sections for that. Doing categorical variables and numerical variables one at a time, and then plotting bivariate relationships, either when you have a numeric response or a categorical response. And then after we've got all of our plotting methods down, then we're going to get into statistical methods. And some of these classes, like class 9 and class 11, I have a separate worksheet that you don't work with your own personal data set for that assignment. But then what you learn in that assignment, you will typically follow up and do with your own data. And this gives us a way to make sure that we have a clean and controlled data set to learn the principles and then apply that to your data set, which we don't know what's going to happen because you may be the first person to look at the relationships that you've chosen. Okay, and that will take us through the rest of the semester, where we'll learn all the univariate and bivariate traditional statistical techniques. Okay, so all right, let's do the document overview, and then we will copy our class 4 assignment in here. So I'm going to actually look at this in RStudio. So I'm in the outline. I've got this top section, which is the YAML, where we specify the basic things that you're going to change here are these top few. There are lots of output options. We're outputting as HTML. Please don't try to output as a PDF unless you really know what you're doing and you've got LaTeX installed and know how to resolve LaTeX problems. For almost everyone, including myself, I prefer just using the HTML, even though I consider myself a fairly expert in LaTeX. All right. Whenever you've got a bunch of text that you want to comment and not use, you can put them in these HTML tags to make them disappear. So it basically requires an exclamation point and a few hyphens after the open triangular bracket, and then you close that triangular bracket. This is just stylizing the section headers in bold font and with a certain margin. Okay. These hyphens here draw a horizontal line. So let's take a quick look at the top of here. So I've got the table of contents up here, and we are now beyond the table of contents. You can see this very faint horizontal line. That line, in fact, let's see if we can get this a little bit side by side. That is good enough for now. So this horizontal line is this set of hyphens. That's what creates a horizontal line. I use them fairly regularly to help give a little extra space and to indicate when something's large is changing. Then, just like in a Wikipedia page, if you've ever done that, a pound sign specifies a section header. So document overview, it gives it a number and then a bold font here. Okay, and then the rest of the text, this document is organized by week and class number. Actually, it's only organized by class number right now. By class number. And so this text over here ends up looking like nice looking text over here. Okay. You can do bulleted lists and numbered lists, and that's looking nice and organized over here. Okay. We've got a section here. So then double pound sign gives you a subsection. If pound gives you a section, then double pound gives you a subsection, and triple pound gives you a subsection, and so on. And so notice that global code options is under section 1 and puts a decimal 1 as the subsection. All right, so I've got some code here. The main things maybe that are sort of interesting, I don't know. So any comments that occur as you run code won't be shown. We're not going to see messages or warnings in our output. Sometimes there's code that you run where it produces like 100 warnings that are not very critical. Anyway, they're not going to show up here. They will show up when you run code in the console, so you will get the warnings that you need. Width gives you the output of the text. 80 or 100 tends to be fairly good for the width here. Whenever we create figures, they will be aligned in the center of the page, and the default height for a figure is 4 inches and the width is 6 inches. Okay. And finally, there's this option down here for cache equals false. I will probably talk a lot more about that later in the semester after we have produced a lot of code. In our case, this actually probably won't matter too much. Caching results is a way of storing the results, sort of like a geocache, but we know what they are. We know where things are. Where you save the results so that you don't have to recompute things later on. Okay, so if you want to understand a little bit more about that, you can read this stuff up here. If you do want to run cache, you need to put true here, but then be aware that if things are not, I should say, are not working as expected, or if I want to freshly compute everything, I delete the cache folder. Okay, this is all will come later. All right. I've got some of my naming conventions here. That's what I did at the beginning. I put the date in the file name. And I've structured the document to include all of our assignments here. Okay. And there are some class numbers that do not appear in this document. It turns out that I didn't complete that list, but maybe I'll come back to it someday and put those numbers in there. They're all the ones that say something like separate worksheet. Okay, so all the separate worksheets don't appear here. Okay, that gets us down to research questions. Class 4, your personal code book. So this appears in my screen just as it's going to appear for you. This is brand new. It's as though I haven't done anything. I've got spaces for my research questions, for my topic, and for my code book. And notice in the code book area that I've got so you can update this here for your primary association. My association is about nicotine dependency versus frequency and quantity of smoking and depression. Okay. And I've got all the variables that I need to have in there, and then this is where you added all of your stuff. Okay. Furthermore, down below there's also additional variables where you may have created some more there. So what I'm going to do, okay, the next stuff is the class 5 data management stuff. So I'm going to delete all the stuff that is here, and I'm going to copy it over from my codebook. Do I need the rubric? I can keep it in there if I want. It's not so bad to have it in there. So I'm going to go over to Personal Codebook, and there's the rubric, and okay, I've got the strategy in there. We've got, so the main thing need is here's the topic, research questions, and then the codebook. Okay, so I've got the depression and smoking variables. There's some additional variables I'm going to create from the ones that we're using, and then below, right, this is the list of variables that from the assignment, but I'm not going to copy that over. All right, I'm going to copy, so I'd press Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, and then I'm just going to paste it here. And I'm going to scroll up just to make sure that things sort of make sense. So topic and research question, there's my topic, there's my research question. All right, so the topic that I'm going to be using this semester is there an association between nicotine dependence and the frequency and quantity of smoking in adults? The association may differ by ethnicity, age, gender, and other factors, though some of these additional relationships we won't be able to really assess until we have more sophisticated statistical models, such as multiple regression, that we'll learn about next semester. All right, and then my research questions, you can see, is nicotine dependence, and I put the original variable in here. You can also put your more friendly variable name in there, associated with smoking frequency and quantity. So now there's no question about what the relationships are that I'm going to be assessing, because I've got the variables right in there. Is nicotine dependence associated with depression? And finally, is the association between nicotine dependence and depression different by demographics such as education or sex? Okay. And then I have the variables I need in my codebook. So I made a change to my outline. I want to be, I made a big change. I made a big copy paste. So I'm going to knit it and make sure that nothing broke. Okay, it compiled. And if I go back over to my browser and press F5 or Control R, it will refresh the file. So if I scroll down to the personal codebook, okay, topic of interest, great, here's my stuff. Is there an association between nicotine dependence, etc.? I've got my codebook in here and I'm ready to go. All right, so that is where I want to stop this video. I've got my codebook in here and I'm ready for doing some analysis. In the next video, we will cover class 5. We'll read the data set in and actually start doing some R programming.